Good morning. We'll call the Wednesday, March 15th meeting of the Criminal Justice Committee to order. Start with roll call, please.
Mr. Hess?
Present.
Mr. Long?
Present.
Mr. Fairfield?
Present.
Mr. Tholen? Mr. Carrico?
Present.
Mr. Eckhoff?
Present.
Mr. Hunter? Ms. Turner? Ms. Monday? Ms. Andrade? Ms. Armours? Ms. Rittmanick-Emmy? Mr. Scanlon?
Present.
Mr. Wheeler?
Present.
Mr. Alexander Hildebrand? We have a quorum.
I have not received anything for public comment. Is there any public comment at this time? Any public comment? Moving on, the approval of the minutes should have received. Take a motion to approve. Mr. Carrico, second by Mr. Hunter. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Up next, Chief Judge, Mr. Cunnington.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Just a couple things to report on. We do have our applications out for a new associate judge, and those are due March 20th. And then they get filed in Springfield. They send them up to us, and then we'll interview the candidates. And this is a selection by the 7 circuit judges that we have in our circuit, Kankakee and Iroquois counties. And majority vote of the circuit judges then elects that associate judge for a 4-year term. So we're looking forward to getting basically what was Judge Kramer's seat filled. If you recall, Judge Kramer retired. Judge Slawinski, an associate judge, ran for circuit judge. He won that seat, and that vacated the Judge Slawinski's associate seat. And then the legislature did pass a bill that allowed us to fill that seat, basically saying that the results of the 2020 census would not be considered for purposes of the associate judge positions. Those positions are figured according to our population. So when our population went down in the 2020 census, we lost that seat. Well, we got it back, basically. So that's good news for our county. Second, the basement remodeling is progressing nicely. The anticipated completion date is in about 3 weeks. We expect to be moving a couple of offices in 3 weeks. The majority, though, we're still waiting on doors. That's going to be probably the end of May before the doors come in. So we do have to have some of those areas secured before we can move offices down in the basement. The last thing, we are amending Supreme Court Rule 45 that has to do with remote appearances. That's been mandated by the Supreme Court that we change it's statewide, but as we change the ability of people to appear in court remotely. Now, there will be substantial exemptions to that for hearings and trials and what we call mandatory appearances, but we're just in the process now of putting together that rule, and we do have some discretion in our circuit to draft a rule, but they are strongly encouraging, if not mandating, that there be more access to our court system by remote appearances, which will be the Zoom platform. Any questions?
No questions?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Up next, Circuit Clerk, Ms. Cianci. In your package, you have a copy of her monthly report. Take a motion to approve. Mr. Eckhoff, second by Mr. Fairfield. Good morning, Sandy.
Good morning.
Comments on your report?
Nope, they're all usual and customary. If anybody has any questions for me.
What's the highlighted on the February from the...
Just that it's the February totals.
Okay. Any questions on Sandy's reports?
You can see there's a little bit of an uptick for February, and that's because we have the iDrop. I'll go into that once you approve all the reports. I guess I can talk about it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, so the little bit of uptick that you see in February is from the Illinois Debt Recovery Program started. And what that is, during the tax season, the comptroller is able to take the money from the Illinois state taxes to pay towards the debt of our cases here. We send it to Harris & Harris, our third-party collection agency. They work through the files and decide which ones they want to send to the comptroller or through the program, to the debt recovery program, and then they are able to go through with social security numbers and things like that, and then they find people that have their taxes, just the Illinois state taxes. They can take the money from that, and then if there are any lottery winnings or other gambling winnings, things like that, whatever that the IRS knows about, then they are able to take that money and pay it towards their fines. The comptroller did take a lot of the ability away a few years ago. They've limited it tremendously. So if you look at the history, like in 2019, in February, we collected $90,000, and then 87, 71, and so it's gone down dramatically over the last few years. But we did see a little bit of an uptick this year. So March and April will be better months for us than they have been going, backwards. So if anybody has any questions about that.
Questions for Sandy on the reports?
Okay, so the computerization, the Tyler kickoff, we're doing that on the first week in April. There's a team coming from wherever they're coming from. I'm going to say Texas, but maybe there's some that are from other places as well. And we're going to meet in the probation department in that meeting room over there. And they're just going to lay out our plan. So it's very vague at the moment. We don't really have a lot of information. They're just giving us enough at the time that we need it. So we'll be learning more and more about that as we go along. But we're excited to get that started. And then the other thing is the Administrative Office of Illinois Courts, they've been creating more reports for us to complete. Kankakee has been excused from a lot of it because they know that our system can't produce the reports that they need without rewriting the programs and things like that. And so eventually we will be caught up to what they need. So that's exciting news too. So that's about it that I have for now.
Any questions for Sandy? Will that be automatic with a new system? Will you be able to?
Yes. We were on a meeting the other day, and one of the gals from the administrative office, one of the things that everybody has done, and it was one of the first things I wanted to do, is ADR, and that's automated data reporting. And for us to do it after we got court view, it was going to still be another, couple $100,000 or whatever, just to add that component in. And what that does is we send all of the dispositions to Secretary of State and Bureau of Investigation, things like that. Well, we do it by paper still. And so the other day we were on this meeting, and I got a text from one of the ladies from AOIC, and she said, okay, we're going to get to do this now. And I said, yeah. So we're all, they're even excited for us, because they know how big of a struggle we've had over the last 10 or 11 years. So.
Good.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Hunter.
Oh.
Penny, just one question. Your attrition rate, and by virtue of the new system that you're going to be incorporating, what is that going to do for your personal services in terms of manpower?
Well, we'll see. Like, not at the beginning, it's not going to shrink that much. We have a lot of backlog to still get incorporated and done. But it's supposed to, once we get through the system, it should be able to reduce the staffing.
Stabilization, you think?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Up next, State's Attorney's Mr. Rowe. In the package, you have a copy of his grand jury report and grand jury statistics report. Take a motion to combine and approve them. Oh. Mr. Scanlon, and second by Miss Monday.
Thank you. You can see we had 23 cases go to grand jury, so we're up to 138 on the year. Last year, by the end of April, we were around, well, I would say by the end of March, we were around 190. We've got 37 coming up on the next grand jury this week, so it's pretty consistent. We're not too far. At least we're not ahead of where we were last year, but not all that much behind either. And you can see again, 23 felony domestics really leads the pack here, unfortunately. And I know I've explained this many times at prior meetings, but those are some of the worst and most violent cases we can have come into the system. They involve aggravated domestic battery, strangulation cases, repeat offenders. So, we're working so hard on that. We work with Harbor House. They've started a DV task force that's been in operation for probably at least 6 months, maybe going on almost a year now. We're working very closely with local law enforcement. We want to start getting out into the community to start educating people on the dangers of strangulation cases. I think people think, you grab someone by the neck, maybe that's what happens in the course of a regular battery or a fight, but strangulation is just such a dangerous and lethal type of violent offense, and we want to make sure that the community understands that and how close someone is to death when they're being strangled. So we're going to start working a little bit more on community education in that regard with Harbor House, with the task force, with law enforcement departments.
Mr. Hunter.
Jim, again, congratulations on your performance yesterday. And I was flipping through the channels and briefly saw you. Our prayers were with you yesterday as our meeting started. But got a question. Taking a look at the Vallis and Johnson mayoral race in Chicago, Johnson's talking about, I think this, Johnson was talking about hiring interventionists, social workers, and so forth, as opposed to putting another responsibility on the cops. When the cops come to the house in our society, they're expected to do a myriad of, they have a myriad of responsibilities, which they may not be capable of doing. They may not be thoroughly trained. What do you think? And I'm hitting you with this, that maybe if we had social workers, and you were just talking about the problems, interpersonal relation problems with men and women and boyfriends, girlfriends, and all that stuff, do you think that social workers and those kind of individuals could help with some of this stuff?
I think anyone, either in the prosecution side or a role in law enforcement, the reality is you can't, like they always say, right, you can't prosecute or police your way out of so many of the problems that you have in the communities. It comes down to parents, comes down to schools, comes down to churches, comes down to community. I don't know from the police side. That's I'll let the police speak to their side. But
I want your opinion, because I'm going to ask the same thing of the sheriff. But
yeah, from my perspective, in a prosecutor's role, we're trying our best to bring programs in prevention and intervention to keep the kids out of trouble, keep them from ending up in the adult court system. They talk about that school to prison pipeline. It's really a juvenile court to prison pipeline, because most young adults that we see on the second and third floor, where they're charged now with a felony or a serious offense, we've seen them previously in the juvenile court system. So we need to really narrow that pipeline to keep those kids from getting there. Social workers certainly play a role, because trauma plays a role. And in order to address trauma, you've got to have licensed clinical social workers. We're providing those resources to kids with a partnership through Riverside. So we're already doing that to some extent.
And not only are you dealing with the kids, you're dealing with those families too, which there's a spillover in terms of involving them as well too. And that's good stuff.
But as far as having, a social worker show up at a crime scene, You know, I'm a social worker. I showed up at a crime scene once. I wouldn't
Yeah.
recommend it. I'll leave it at that.
Well, I didn't know you, but you climbed through the window too.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Any questions on the reports before we get carried away again? We have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
All right. Thank you.
You remember that when he went through the window?
Public Defender's Office, Mr. Penderwick. In your package, have a copy of Mr. Penderwick's monthly report. Take a motion to
Just
approve.
wanted to arrest him, you know?
Mr. Long,
About that.
second by Ms. Turner. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, everyone. No applause? Okay. Very good. Maybe later. I've got nothing specific to add regarding the reports. We're just doing our best and trying to keep everything moving smoothly as possible, given our statutory obligations and responsibilities. But other than that, I have nothing to add.
Any questions on the reports? We have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Very good. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody.
Probation, Mr. Latham. Copy of Mr. Latham's report in your packet. Take a motion to approve. Mr. Long, second by Mr. Fairfield.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tom.
Just to touch on my usual areas where I highlight, we had 2,430 contacts last month, collected 355 drug tests, and we have 15 individuals on electronic monitoring. In our juvenile division, we have 5 in custody of River Valley and 8 on home confinement. So just wanted to touch on a few of those, unless there's any questions.
Any questions? We have a motion, a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
All right, just a couple things. I think I can't remember if I said talked last month about it. We submitted a grant for a drug court program.
Yeah.
Did I?
Yeah.
Okay, that's been sent off. Hopefully we'll hear soon. That'll be, like I said, $2 million over 5 years to help for services from drug testing to a lot of things. It's a huge help. So we're hoping to get word on that in the next few weeks. The only other thing I have is we have a Veterans Court graduation, March 23rd at 2:30 in room 300. There's 2 graduates, and it's always a very nice event. So it's always nice to see, and they have a guest speaker. So that's at 2:30 on the 23rd. And that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Questions for Tom? Thank you, sir. Up next is the sheriff, Mr. Downing. In your packet, and you should have received electronically, you have a copy of the sheriff's report. Take a motion to approve. Mr. Eckroff, second by Mr. Long. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Just a couple things on the report. If you look at the out-of-county revenue for the first 3 months of the year, we're $631,000 ahead of where we were last year at this time, after the first 3 months. I believe I told this committee that that number will level off at some point because we started getting Champaign County toward the middle of the year, so that number should level off a little bit, but it's looking like we should be around a little over $1 million more this year than last year, so that's a good thing for us. Our Fed numbers continue to increase. Champaign County has remained pretty consistent as well, so we will continue with that. One of the issues that facilities are having all over the country is, and we've talked about it before, is staffing. We are still probably about 5 to 7 correctional officers short. We continue to recruit. There's part of the problem, one of the problems that we've run into, if by chance we find a person who maybe wants to move here or come back here because they're from here and they work at a correctional facility out of state, the training board does not recognize corrections training from another state. So to give you an example, I have an officer that I just hired. He started Monday. He has 4 years of corrections experience in Brevard County, Florida. And I have to send him to 8 weeks of corrections basic. It makes absolutely no sense. We have talked to the training board numerous times. The rules are not the same for law enforcement. There are some stipulations where they will grant waivers for law enforcement, police, on the police side, but at this time they have nothing in place to grant any sort of waiver to people who move from out of state who are already corrections certified at their facility or in their state. People wonder why people aren't moving to Illinois, they're moving out.
What does that cost us for the training?
So obviously we're paying them their salary from the day they start while they're gone. And the one thing the training board did do is police now have to go not only 14 weeks, now they've increased that to 16 weeks. And corrections has increased their training from 5 weeks to 8 weeks. So now I have to send a 4-year experienced correctional officer to an 8-week training that not only has he already gone through, and in some cases, and we've had cases where somebody had come from another state and literally had more than the required 5 weeks, because that's what corrections training is now. That changes in June. So they literally had more training than the 5 weeks, and that wasn't good enough for the training board. So it's a little frustrating to try to get, you know, you've got some people who want to move into our state, come to work for us, and then you say, oh, by the way, you got to leave your family for 8 weeks and go back to correctional officer basics. So we're still dealing with that. I mean, we are working with the training board. We are trying to come to some sort of agreement. Obviously, from state to state, there are some different rules in corrections, and you know, even if we can narrow that down to a week-long thing where we just talk about things going on in Illinois, that would certainly still benefit us. So we'll continue to do that. But staffing-wise, Chief Kalawenzu, Assistant Chief Schultz have done a great job in getting people to apply and getting their backgrounds done and getting them in, and they continue to do that every day. So a couple other notes on the report. If you look, and this is obviously concerning as well, you see that for the first 3 months of the year, there have been 25 individuals sentenced to the Illinois Department of Corrections. And unfortunately, there have been 64 who've been released and sent back to Kankakee County. Now, obviously the hope is that they come back, they don't reoffend, they, you know, learn from their mistakes and become productive citizens. Unfortunately, we all know that sometimes that's not true. So we'll be dealing with some of those people who are released. But the prison population right now in Illinois is at an all-time low. They continue to release individuals early, and you can make your own assumptions as to why crime continues to increase in the state of Illinois.
It's good for their budget, though.
It's great for their budget. Under the sworn side, one of the positives, if you look at the accidents so far in the first 3 months, in 2022 we averaged 38 accidents per month, or a total of 457 for the year for fiscal year 2022. The beginning of 2023 has started out fairly well. We're only averaging 19 accidents in the first 3 months, which has been cut in half. Part of that is more than likely because of the mild winter we've had. I know that just recently, over the last couple bad weather incidents that we've had over the last couple weeks, I think people got so used to driving in dry weather that they can't stay out of ditches and can't stay out of banging into each other because of the nasty weather, because they don't slow down. But for the most part, it's good. It's slowed down a little bit accident-wise, so that's a positive. So that's all I got on the report.
Any questions on the report? We have a motion, a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Animal control update. The building design continues to move forward. Carrie and her staff are working with the architects. I don't have a specific date of when that will be done, but I know that it's going to be fairly soon. So we will certainly keep you up to date on that. We did have a couple animal control officers who were injured last week due to some severe bites. One had some surgery, had to have surgery, and is currently on light duty. And it's just a reminder that, you know, these animal control officers are out there dealing with pets. Sometimes they're not pets, sometimes they're strays, and, you know, they don't know how they're going to react. And unfortunately, this one got a hold of one of our animal control officers, and she is currently on light duty. So we'll continue to deal with that. Any questions on?
Mr. Hunter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Got a question, Sheriff. One of your motto programs with the trustees that the city of Kankakee interfaced with you guys with, and they went around the various neighborhoods and parts of the county, did a hell of a job in terms of cleaning up refuse, you know, junk, trash, and so forth. Will you guys ever revisit that at all?
So yes, we have. And, you know, obviously, and I think, I don't know if Tom, Tom's still here, you know, they've got people assigned to public or community service work as well. Problem is, one, is a little bit of a staffing issue for us to take them out. City, I don't know if they have a community services officer anymore.
I don't think so.
Yeah, so that's who was taking out the inmates, but probably the most important part of that whole equation is that right now we don't have those that are in jail that are in for minor offenses. I mean, our driving, you know, our traffic offenders, our misdemeanors, they're not sitting in jail. So I'm not going to let a class 1 felony out to go pick up trash with the thought of him possibly, you know, he's looking at prison time. You know, the gist of that program was for low-level offenders who, you know, they volunteered. It was all volunteer. We did not make anybody do anything they didn't want to, but they were low-level offenders who basically they were able to get outside, have a smoke break, have maybe a fast food lunch as opposed to lunch at the jail, which isn't bad, by the way, but fast food is always better. And so there were a lot of advantages to having it, but we don't have the personnel from an inmate side to be able to let them out and do that work.
Okay. It was a really good program.
It was, and you know, I know probation is doing the community service as well, and that may be something that you could start with them because those guys aren't in custody. So that's the biggest thing for us is the public safety side of it.
Okay, thank you.
Corrections vans?
Sure.
So corrections vans, much like cars, are hard to come by. I had reached out to all 102 sheriffs in the state of Illinois, and they are having the same issues. One of the things that we can do is to place an order for corrections vans, not knowing if they'll come in 90 days or 2 years. Right now, we have two, I think the last purchase we made were 2 vans in 2021, 2 years ago. Obviously, those are still in great shape. The miles aren't that high. Those are the vans that we take when we transport to basically out of county, when we go to Chicago, when we go to Champaign, and we go to Indiana for the federal transports. All the other vehicles we have are all local. In other words, we don't transport them very far from Kankakee County because of their age, their miles, and the shape that they're in. They are very well cared for. Our vehicle maintenance guy does a great job with them, but you know, it becomes an issue of, do we want to put something on the road that's got 150,000 miles and is about 5 or 6 years old. So my request would be that if we order vans, if we were to be able to order vans, if we were to get permission to order vans, as I said, we don't know when those vans will come in. It could be 90 days, it could be 2 years. If we order a number of vans, and that number we can certainly discuss, I would suggest ordering 5, and here's why. We have a better chance of getting some vans of those 5. If we were to get all 5, obviously that would be costly. Right now the cost is about $49,000 per van, and that's before putting the equipment in the back to house prisoners during transport. So you're probably talking more like about $65,000 per van by the time it's all said and done. I say 5, and I know that sounds like a lot of money, but based on the information that I received from the other counties, and I received numerous responses because nobody can get vans, I would suggest we order 5. If they come in, we can deal with that then, and we can even look to those other counties to say, hey, we have a van, it's brand new, if you want it. So we do have a mechanism to get rid of it. I say 5 because we may get 2 in 90 days, we may get 2 or 3 more in 3 years, 2 years. So it's just a crapshoot, unfortunately, and it's not going to change anytime soon. So I would like this to move forward, and then we can talk about how many, if we should just order 2 and be done with it, or if we should order the 5 and see what happens.
Comments? Chairman Wheeler. Chairman Wheeler, do you have a comment?
No, I don't have a comment. If the sheriff has that plan, I think we should throw it to finance and have them kind of hash it out between now and then. And I see his point. I know it's impossible to find these vehicles, but wow, what, 400 grand? That's a lot. So
right.
We have to.
No doubt.
Yeah, we have to consider that, but it might be a strategic decision we make. Can't we use, like, you know, some 1977 VW microbus and retrofit those? You know?
do you have one you'd be willing to donate?
Not anymore, actually. It would be running now anyway. No, it's a lot, and those cages are expensive. So, you know, we'd have to figure out how much, depending on which model you get. They're all different. You know,
yes,
they're custom for each one.
We've really tried to stay with the Ford Transits. That's probably the most common vehicle out there, but in our search, we searched for any model of a van type of vehicle, and there's just not anything available. So,
well, and this is not being critical, but it's just to highlight the situation. We got an animal control pickup that we still can't get a box for in the back.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the situation I worry about is you know, we got the vans in, and you know, we can't even get the cage made. You know,
well, and that's Chairman, that's true with even our squad cars. And trying to get light bars and everything else, we're waiting on some of those parts as we are building out the squad cars. So that's just a common theme going forward, and it's unfortunate, but you know, that's where we're at now.
I guess maybe for the committee's sake, if we were ever in a position to handle this type of uncertainty, meaning cash on hand, it would be now. So if we were going to roll the dice, there is no better time, you know, to do this. I will say, being that we have a lot of cash on hand, and the prospects are good right now if the economy doesn't go upside down. So.
And I don't want to spend all that cash. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah.
But I think from a preparedness standpoint, I think that would benefit us in the long term. And the other thing we're not doing, because both of our buses have I think they were 2005s, 2006 maybe. You know, we contemplated coming here to ask for a bus. Those things are $100,000 plus. So we're better off getting 2 vans, 3 vans, whatever, as opposed to 2 more buses. So,
Mr.
Well, I can attest to the need, Mr. Chairman. I just want to mention I was, you know, one of the cars in the line when one of the vans broke down on the exit, and about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So I do know we literally drive them into the ground. You know, so I can imagine it is a need. So I can attest to that.
Mr. Scanlon, first.
Do you get priority when you order?
Mic, please.
Do you get priority when you order more for the build?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. I didn't know if
Not that I'm aware of.
Manufacturer.
Mr. Fairfield.
Mr. Chairman, I think we ought to push forward with the 5 and just see what happens and send it to finance.
You're making a motion on
Yes.
that then? Mr. Long seconds.
And I'll bring specific numbers to the finance committee as far as cost and everything else, and what we have right now.
I have one question, Sheriff.
Yes.
If we get 2 now, and we get another 2 a year and a half from now, the price is going to go sky high by then.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
With the figures you bring us.
Yeah, the number I have now is if we order them today.
Yeah.
So if we can lock it in at that price, then 2 years from now, who knows what it's going to be. So that's a good point.
Okay. Any questions or anything on the motion? Mr. Hunter.
Just a little comment. I know my uncle at one point went directly to the factory and got a Ford, I remember, but I'm not sure what the process is in terms of ordering them and getting them and so forth, because I know there's a pervasive problem universally in terms of supply stuff, you know, problems. And I was just wondering if you could maybe look into wherever the vehicles are assembled, you know, maybe there could be something, because I know my uncle went to the factory and got a vehicle.
We'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
All they can do is say no.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion to purchase 5 vans, move this to finance. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
The only other thing I got, and you guys already recognized him, but I just can't tell you how great of a job Jim and his staff did. His civil attorneys, John and Teresa, and his paralegals, Jody and Desiree, they worked their tails off for this, and what they're trying to do it's not political. It's about doing what's right for our community and what's right for the public and public safety. And I can't say, you as a board, and I know myself, I know I'm proud that he's our state's attorney, and they did a great job yesterday and all through this process. So, and for those of you that were wondering about and I know, Steve, you're gonna ask a question about social workers, I do have a picture of somebody climbing through a window if anybody wants to see it, so.
I think everybody saw that at one time, didn't they?
Yeah, but it's always good to have and throw back out there every once in a while. So.
Any other questions for the sheriff?
I have a question.
Thank you.
Andy, have it.
It's just real quick. It has to do with sending mental health professionals on a police call. I don't know how I call it industry, but it's more of a calling, I'm sure. But you hear that. I have trouble with sending somebody who's not trained as a police officer out into a volatile situation. And I want to know if do we assume that a police officer is going to be with a mental health professional in these situations, or are these politicians saying just send somebody who's mental health, a social worker in instead of the police? I'm trying to figure this out because it doesn't make sense to me as logical. There
are obviously every call is different. That's probably the most important thing to keep in mind. And a lot of times there's not a need for that mental health person, but there are sometimes that there are. Would they be great to have? Sure. Would they get in the way? Sometimes. We're dealing right now, and I think I mentioned to this committee last month, and we haven't gotten any further with it. To give you an example, DCFS, who goes to homes without police, and they literally passed legislation, and the governor signed legislation that DCFS can contract with the sheriffs all across the state, and they pay for everything for that deputy to be and to go to homes and to do some background on the homes that these DCFS agents are going to. And I think that's good for DCFS. We're more in a they would want us in a non-police type of uniform. They would want us in a polo shirt. So you get that whole mix of, well, do you want the police there, or do you want somebody standing there in a polo shirt with a gun on? So yeah, DCFS agents aren't, they're not trained to respond to things that are going to happen when they walk up to a door, and we all know how we value our kids, and when somebody starts walking up to your door wanting to take your kids, how are you going to feel? And what are you going to do? So I mean, I think that concept is good to have a police officer there, but by the same token of mental health, how many times do we run into a mental health situation that had escalated? All the training now is in de-escalation. So that's now, the first thing an officer does when he gets there isn't to go in there, bang on the door and pull somebody out. The first thing they're doing is figuring out how they want to de-escalate a situation. So, will a mental health person help? Yes. Is it realistic to find mental health trained people to respond when we respond? I don't know how realistic that is. It sounds great.
How do you put that onto a dispatcher to make that decision to send mental health people or send a police officer? Right. I mean, then you're looking at the training that would have to go on with the dispatchers.
Yes.
Yes.
So with the police officers, there is some training for them. Yes. For the mental health and dealing with that situation, because half of the time that's what it really is.
Mandated. That training is mandated. Yes.
Okay, so there is that at least. Okay, thank you.
Not only the mental health, but also the de-escalation part of it, which is, obviously that's what you want to do from the I don't want to say olden days because I was probably around then, but when you go in there and start putting hands on somebody right away, that's not the first thing we do anymore. I mean, it's about de-escalation. So
right, and from all the stories I've heard from my sister, I definitely knew that she had that training.
Yep.
So
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Craig had one.
Craig. Mr. Long.
Just a comment, not trying to trump what Sheriff Downing's had to say, but part of the extension of the training down at PTI is that type of training. So the 2 weeks they're adding on has some of that training extended more than they had before. And I would just say from my own personal experience, by the time the call goes to come to someone's house for a domestic incident, we're not going to sit over the kitchen table and talk over coffee.
Yeah.
It's because the
the situation is beyond management on their own.
It's volatile.
And most times it's very volatile. So I think the important thing, the takeaway is let the police come do their job, stabilize, and figure out how the next step happens. How you get them to counseling? How do you get them to mend their differences, so, if you will? And that's where the mental health person, the professional, probably is absolutely appropriate. But the night of that call, dangerous, very dangerous.
Mr. Scanlon.
And we're pretty much already doing that when we get dispatched to mental evaluations and stuff like that. The fire department stages, and then once it's cleared, they come in when the situation's safe. So we're already kind of doing a little bit of that right now and practicing that.
I mean, the calls that we get, and it's happening at every agency, the calls that we get for mental evals and mental transports to the hospital. So a lot of times we'll respond to a call, and it may be a mental health issue where a guy threatened to do harm to himself or his family. They bring him to the local hospital, and so yeah, we're doing a lot of that mental health stuff up front once they get to the hospital. Now, unfortunately, if the individual doesn't want to stay at the hospital, he doesn't have to. So then where does he go? Right back to where he, and there's been times where we've been called back to the same place after an incident. So,
but you won't be able to do that with this new bill. Correct?
Well, probably not. Probably not.
Any other questions for the sheriff?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, the coroner, Mr. Gessner. In your package, you have a copy of his monthly reports and the monthly receipts of money. Take a motion to combine and approve them. Mr. Eckhoff, second by Mr. Hunter. Morning. Comments on your reports, sir?
Basically, you see, well, February was a short month. We're down a number of calls. Autopsy's been down a little bit. Only had 3 last month there, which is good. Other than that, it's self-explanable. I think where we're at, we're still 2 pending on the drugs yet, and I'll do that in a few minutes.
Any questions on the report? We have a motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Comments, no.
Comments on, excuse me, on our overdoses right now. We got hit pretty hard in January with almost 14 of them we had, which was unbelievable. But as of February, you see that we're down on February, which is good. We've been out and about throughout the county, just about Monday through Friday, teaching to the seniors, to the kids, the high schools. Prom's coming up. We want to make sure we hit people to let them know what's out there. Also, it really kind of the age-wise has gone up to 50 years of age is the count on the overdose right now. Our youngest is basically 42, which was the average. Our oldest was 77. So at this point here, I wanted to talk about a drug that I know Mr. Hunter wanted to bring up about the new drug out there on xylazine. Xylazine has been hitting us pretty hard lately. It's a drug for horses, basically. It's a veterinarian type drug. It's a non-opiate. It's kind of a sedative for them, a muscle relaxer. It can lower your blood pressure. But the key part of it is not a controlled substance. So in other words, at Court and Schuyler here, the officer pulls somebody over and sees 1,000 pounds of xylazine in their car. There's nothing we can do about it. So that's very concerning that I introduced a bill, and Jackie Haas took it, along with Senator Joyce, to try to get this taken care of where we could do something about xylazine. We've had 6 cases in Kankakee County, and what agitates me is that's 6 deaths in our county because of this drug. And I warned you years ago in 2012 about the heroin coming, and now we have the xylazine. It's mixed with cocaine and fentanyl. It's called a deadly drug right there. 2 deadly drugs. We've talked about it all over, and NBC last night news had a full 4 minutes on xylazine on last night, of what it's doing in New York, Ohio, Indiana, and guess where else it comes into Illinois. And we're seeing it. So it's something I'm very aware of. I'm working extremely hard with that. Introducing a bill, but I got shot down by the veterinarians. They don't want to do that. But it's still into effect right now. I think it's in committee. So if you get an opportunity to talk to your representatives, Senator Joyce or Jackie Haas, please mention something about that bill, because it's not done in this area here. We're dealing with a lot of fentanyl. Over 84% of our ODs are fentanyl. Cocaine's back because it's a cheaper type drug, and it can be mixed very easy. And people don't know it. You can't do this and say, yes, that's cocaine and fentanyl. You can't do that. Again, I'll take any questions on that, but like I say, it's not a controlled substance right now. So I'm working also with the state's attorney to help me work on that particular bill. I appreciate that, Jim, for what you do.
Question on that, Ms. Andrade?
For parents who cannot identify what anything is, like, how do we start informing them what drugs are being used, what their kids are doing, you know, signs of this or that and what it is?
What can we do?
Yeah, like as parents, how do we notice the signs and what drugs are?
Well, basically, that's basically what we're doing out there, is talking about the signs and symptoms of, we've even talked about, years ago, we brought a heroin trailer into this area and showed basically it was a bedroom where people hide their drugs, kids hide their drugs. And it was so interesting to see. We're on a light switch there. They put a piece of string on all their drugs and sent it down, and you would never even know.
And we
that.
don't have that anymore here, do we? Like, you guys don't do that anymore?
Well, we're working on that.
Okay.
We're working on that. So very soon you'll hear something on that. So, but I understand that. That's part of me is I'm out to the public. My staff, my chief deputy, he teaches out there. I teach out there. We've hit all the schools except for Bradley. We're due to go into McNamara here pretty quick to talk about all this stuff and what's going on. And you can hear a pin drop when you talk. And it's something that anytime you have somebody in your ward or that you want me to come in to talk about it in front of your people, your area, I would be more than happy to, any time of the day.
Mr. Wheeler?
Yes, I've heard about this a little bit before, and I wonder if Coroner Gresser could confirm, but when Ms. Andrade asked, you know, what can you do? Well, I listen for the word trank, because that's what people call it on the street. It's called trank. And if you hear your kids saying that, that's when you need to realize that you're in a whole different world. And I don't know if that's just in certain parts of the country, but that is the common slang, if you will. It also does cause some skin lesions. So much like meth does, you'll see a very similar look on the people that are succumbing to this. So I don't know if the coroner has comment on that, but that's just where I have heard just from trying to know what's going on.
Well, I know my wife gets mad at me once in a while when I see somebody that I know that looks like has been on drugs the hygiene and that person that I knew before. She gets mad at me when I say something like that. I don't say it out loud to everybody, but it's just something that I've seen. I see not only that, I see him on the autopsy table, and it's something that's really bugged me since I've been coroner. It's something I want to get out. You think that you got it controlled, and then all of a sudden the extra money from the government came in, and boom, everything went back up again. So what was it called? When they got their extra $2,000, whatever it was.
Stimmy.
Huh? Stimulus. Yeah. When that came in there, it blew everything apart again. So we're trying to hold it down. As I said, we're low right now, but if we again, if we bring that number all the way out to November there, that's going to be another 50 ODs again, and that's reducing everything. It's like I said, if you got a place where you want me to talk, I'd be more than happy to go in there, either myself or my chief deputy. We got a program we can do for an hour, 15 minutes. Let's talk on something.
Bob, I know I see those home kits, those Narcan home kits in the gas stations and the Dollar Generals and whatnot. Have you seen any of those home kits at overdose scenes?
Oh, yes.
So they are being used, and
yes,
they're still. Do you think it's helping?
That's I think it is. I mean, it's saving somebody, but then yet if there's nobody home, and that happens too, where you see it. I see a lot of Narcan, but I see it sometimes in vials that comes from up north, Chicago, in cases, and they distribute that out, which again is used by needles. Yeah, but you know, Narcan is not going to save you with xylazine. So it's worth a try because it could be mixed with cocaine and fentanyl to help it. But that's why it's essential that you call 911 and get that squad there. So it's something that's disappointing, and that's something that I bring out too. That's not going to help you with that, but yet continue to try. I've seen some pull out of it. So
well, thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you.
Mr. Hunter?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just, I think my question is obvious in terms of the answer. How pervasive are the drugs in the high schools? And I remember back in the day, you remember Hank Williams, who had the dog and stuff. Mm-hmm. Do we have such a mechanism or a program where we have dope dogs that go into high school and check out the lockers and stuff and go through the hallways or anything at all? Because I'm sure there's a lot of dealing in the high schools and a lot of drugs.
I can't really answer that question. I don't know if the sheriff's still here or that.
Yeah, he's there.
If they still do that.
He's sliding down, but
I haven't seen that.
I got one before you. Mr. Eckhoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There we go. So I'm assuming your House bill is HB 3873.
Mm-hmm.
Could you go ahead and send that to board members for witness slips, since you're talking highly of that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Certainly will.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Emily.
So I have 2 high schoolers at BB, and they have told me that there are dogs occasionally that do come through the school looking for drugs. I think it's like once a year, maybe twice a year. I can't quite remember, but that does happen occasionally.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll be in Bradley here coming up here. So.
Good.
Anything else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any old business come before the committee? Any old business? Any new business? Mr. Carrico.
Thank you, bro.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
I can't see him. Second on that, Mr. Scanlon. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.